All right, guys, welcome back. My name is Jack Paisley, and this is the Sports Casual, and we are coming at you after the last game of the playoffs before the Super Bowl. We had two big games today. Your boy called it. I called the winners last week, so go me. Unfortunately, I was right on one of the games, but let's jump right into it with the first game, which was the Commanders versus the Eagles. And the big story coming into this one was Jayden Daniels on this crazy rookie campaign he's been on. They're just putting him as the best rookie of all time. Like this dude might be the best quarterback in the world right now. Like that was kind of the narrative coming in from the Commander side, and then for the Eagles, it was kind of this is the most talented roster in the NFL right now. Can they finally get over the hump, beat the Chiefs, get back to the Super Bowl? Basically, since the Philly special. So, big time NFL game, and it was kind of a blowout. Eagles won 55-23, and it didn't really feel that close, as weird as it was, because it was kind of close for a little bit. Like Jayden kept him in it, but on that first drive, when the first play they scored like a 60-yard run with Saquon Barkley, like that really set the tone for this game. And then they made Jayden Daniels throw 50 times, which for any quarterback is usually a bad idea, unless your name is like Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. You can maybe get away with it. But they made Jayden throw a lot. So I didn't think Jayden actually looked overwhelmed in his first NFL playoff game or like a championship style game. I thought he played relatively well, all things considered, since the midway through the first or second, they were starting to get to that situation where you're kind of gonna have to throw the ball. And I think the story of this game, if you kind of look at it, is that at some point, barring miracles or injuries or turnovers, it's just the most talented roster is going to win in a lot of these games when you get deep into the playoffs like this, when you come in with experience and then the most talented roster, which is what the Eagles have outside of quarterback. That's really the only, it's not even a deficiency for the Eagles, but that's probably the weak spot of their roster. Uh, from a major contributing starter is Jalen Hurts as a pure thrower, but he's so athletically gifted in terms of a power runner that he kind of offsets that. That's the real only, crazy deficiency this team has, which we'll see if that can push them through the Super Bowl because they put an ass whooping down. Like that defense was balling out, and then you just you their offense is so gifted, both in the receiver room with Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, and then Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts as runners, that it's really hard for these defenses to commit to stopping one of these players. And if you're going to try to commit to stop anybody, it's obviously Saquon Barkley based off of the style of offense they've run in. But Jalen Hurts has been capitalizing off that too. And if you're not careful, you got a 1A and a 1B at receiver, that there's not really a win here for most defensive coordinators on figuring out where to go. Like your best bet is to get ahead of this team so they are forced to put in Jalen Hurts' hand. And we just haven't seen that because their defensive line is so good, and then Vic Fangio's been working his magic that they're a tough beat for or team for anybody to beat. And if as crazy as it sounds, like I think if the Eagles somehow manage to win this Super Bowl, which I personally don't think is going to happen, even though I would like it to, I think that you could start to think about whether Nick Sirianni is one of the greatest Philadelphia coaches of all time for the Eagles. Like I understand Andy Reid's there, but as far as I'm aware, he didn't win a Super Bowl there. Um, so I know he made it to the Super Bowl with Donovan or McNabb, but Sirianni's already done that with Hurts already. So if he makes it back to the Super Bowl, like is he not at least in the conversation of greatest Philadelphia coaches of all time? Like they've been exceptionally relevant. Other than they fell off last year, but they still made the dance. They got their ass whipped, but they were still competitive through the whole season. That I think you start wondering whether this dude is one of the greatest coaches in Eagles organization history if he can beat uh, the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And then if they can't, I think it's going to get loud. Not for I mean, Sirianni's going to get loud everywhere just because he's kind of a weird dude. He's like fiery with fans. And he's just an odd dude. He's not your typical coach, but I think it might get loud from a Jalen Hurts perspective. I think they have decided that like this is a Saquon Barkley led team, and Jalen is clearly like not one of the best pure passers of the ball in the league. That I wonder if they lose in this Super Bowl and it's not really close, whether they start looking at other options at quarterback and consider moving him. It's gonna be tough because he's got that big contract. But I wonder if they start realizing we're gonna put all of our eggs in like the Saquon Barkley surround with talent. Maybe I probably don't think they'll go into a rookie quarterback based off of this draft quality. But who knows? Maybe they start thinking like a Sam Darnold or somebody like that, where they're about on the same throwing level as Sam, maybe or as Jalen. I would argue Sam's maybe a little better thrower of the ball. He might turn it over a little bit more though, but obviously not as good of a runner, even though he can still run. I wonder if they start looking down that option, or maybe you consider trading for someone like Anthony Richardson from the Colts and try to sit him and develop him while you still have Hurts there, so you can try to find that long term like actual passer of the football, not just a pure athlete. Even though Anthony is a all world athlete and just a bigger version of Jalen Hurts, basically, but not quite as good of a thrower. But and then for the Commanders, obviously they weren't supposed to be here. So this season should be looked at as a win. Like you're going from drafting 20th to like or second overall to like 28th or whatever they're going to be, 29th, somewhere in that range of the late end of the round. That is a win for you. Like that means you got your guy. And I do think that Jane Daniels is going to be a star in this league for a long time. But my early prediction for next season is I think that basically what happened to Houston this offseason is going to happen to Washington. You're going to get either a big name trade for probably either big time receiver or running back or somebody like that. Maybe like a Najee Harris or somebody like that. And then you get a bunch of free agents that want to go sign there because you have this young hotshot quarterback in this new culture. And I think that he's going to follow CJ's path of just being slightly underwhelming in his second year. That sophomore slump, I think, is going to get him. I think he'll still be in the playoffs, just like CJ, just because that NFC is not the deepest. That I would say, like I've heard a lot of people talking about him as a top five quarterback in the league this this year right now and going forward. I think next year he's going to be more in that 10 to 15 range. Um, I think that sophomore slumps kick in with everybody on tape. Obviously, you gotta bank on health and stuff, but I would put them exactly where Houston is right now. I think that's where he's going to be. I think he'll actually be better than CJ Stroud just because he's more athletic. Um, but that's my guess going forward for Jaden Daniels in his second year is that he is going to just be an upper half of the league starting caliber quarterback, and then you see moments where he'll be that top five, top three quarterback in the league. That's where I think they'll go. And then jumping to the next game is the Chiefs versus the Bills. The Bills heading over to Arrowhead to play them. The Chiefs get the 32-29 win. And you just can't ever get out of any of these Chiefs games without some kind of controversy. Like this game, it was the Xavier Worthy catch. Like, or the catch. I personally thought the DB caught it. He had two hands on the ball the whole time. Xavier has like one hand hooking while his the other one goes down. Then it kind of lands into his second hand, even though the defender still had, in my opinion, control. But they give it to the Chiefs. That it's frustrating as an NFL fan to watch this. That it just like a couple. I don't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago. The whole rumor of a script, like that controversy or that like conspiracy theory came out. It's really hard not to believe it when you see these kinds of plays with the Chiefs because like they've got the face of the league who is actively crying to refs about calls and he's getting these bullshit roughing the passer and just all these weird calls for them on top of like the whole Taylor Swift is generating women's interest in the NFL, which is great, but you're just painting this big target on this team that is so controversial that you're just tainting like any of these wins for them because they get these weird calls every single game and it never goes against them. The I called this as the win. I thought this was going to happen. I've been pretty adamant. I'm a Chiefs hater. I hate the Chiefs. I hope they are 0-16 every year because they are my division rival and I am over them. Uh, but I didn't see a big path for the Bills to win this game. Like unless Josh Allen put on that superhero cape and had 7 touchdowns and the Chiefs messed up, I didn't see a big path of victory for them, which is kind of what it felt like when they had that early 4 and out, and then the Chiefs drove down and Meat scored, and then it got a little weird with some turnover stuff. Um, and somehow the Bills got back into it, but I wasn't surprised the Chiefs won. My unhappy opinion is that the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl this year. I don't think that the NFL doesn't. I think the NFL wants them to win it, and they are good enough as a team with Mahomes and Reed, and that I think it's the running game honestly that has been the biggest godsend for you because I didn't think Mahomes played amazing this game either. That I thought Kareem Hunt and then Isaiah Pacheco is that 1-2 has just been really good for them this year. So I think it's gonna be a lower passing game Super Bowl than you think. I think it's gonna be the joint effort of Pacheco and Hunt with the occasional play of Mahomes making like a third down like bullshit like running kind of like toss play. I think that's gonna be the Chiefs offense against Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts power running. I mean, Saquon's like a borderline power running. He's a little more speed and elusive, but he's so big and strong that you could label him a power back. But I think that's going to be what the Super Bowl looks like. But I would be a little surprised if the Eagles won. Again, the heart wants it because otherwise I'm gonna have to listen to every person in the world talk about how he Mahomes is the best of all time. The Chiefs are the greatest team of all time, the best dynasty of all time. All this stuff that I don't think is true, but I'm gonna have to listen to it if they do a three-peat, which has never been done before. That I think it's gonna be I think there's two ways you can look at the Super Bowl from a viewership perspective. I think this could either be the historic one that breaks all these records because of this record is on the line, or it can be the lowest ever because you have so much saturation with this team that unless you were a Chiefs fan or just a casual that just knows Taylor Swift and Travis Kelsey, and then they have this really good quarterback, I you hate this team. Like the league at this point hates the Chiefs just like how they hated the Patriots for a long time. I could see this being a record low Super Bowl as well, but I think Kendrick Lamar does boost that a little bit, as weird as that sounds. But I think you'll either see one of these extremely crazy high viewership numbers on that or crazy low. Um, yeah, and that's from the Bills' perspective. I think like the world was ready to anoint Josh Allen this like the best quarterback in the world right now, which I think still belongs to Lamar Jackson personally or Joe Burrow. I would put them both over Josh Allen, but I agree Josh should be in the kind of like the realm of possibility for that award or that honor, or however you want to put it. That going forward, I don't really know where to put their team. I'd probably stock up their O line, but and then the defense probably, and then like they didn't have a major holes. Their receiving core is really young. I think the interesting one is if you bring back Amari Cooper. I think he's probably be willing to take a lower deal to stay with that team just because he's been on such shitty teams forever. But there's not like a clear area that you gotta improve on there other than just the team as a whole. Like you're kind of in the same boat as Lamar where you just can't get past this one dude. And then Josh and Lamar will kind of trade off back and forth with Joe Burrow in there occasionally, but his organizations is so terrible that it's just you can't get past this Chiefs team. And I think Josh deserves what Lamar has been getting, where Lamar's has been getting crucified for the last couple of years because he can't win the playoffs, and Josh really can't either. But it's the same team that is causing both of these issues. So it's just a weird predicament for these all-time great talents. They're born at the wrong time. It's like in UFC how Daniel Cormier, John Jones wasn't born. He's probably one of your greatest of all times, top two or three most likely. But just because that one dude was at the same time, then you're out of luck basically because you can't get by this one dude. And then I think one other thing that this win for the Chiefs solidified, at least in my mind, is Andy Reid is the greatest head coach of all time in the NFL. I know the argument is Bill Belichick has more rings, but my argument for that, unless Bill goes out and wins a national championship or comes back and wins in the NFL, he was solely reliant basically on Tom Brady. Like we saw once he left and before, Bill didn't really win. At least, like above average as a quarterback. With us or above average with different quarterbacks that wasn't named Tom Brady or for Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes now. Andy has won every basically every quarterback he's ever had. He won with Alex Smith, who was labeled a game manager, obviously a good one, but still a game manager. Mahomes obviously is right now, which he's winning with, unfortunately. And then before he had like Donovan McNabb, and then a bunch of other quarterbacks in Philadelphia, and they parted ways, and it seems to have worked out for both since they both ended up with Super Bowls and they're back in it again. But I don't see a big argument for Andy Reid not being one of the top two, and I don't think it's two best quarterback or best coaches in the history of the NFL. And I think if especially I think there's no argument if he wins again this Super Bowl, which unfortunately I think he will. And going forward, I bet he breaks the all time win record. I don't think he's that far off from that. So I think that this season kind of solidified Andy Reid is the best football head coach of all time. Um, yeah, there's not much that I think there is to argue other than just those Super Bowl rings, which is the same as like the Jordan versus LeBron debate, which is solely centered around you know rings, which have some level of luck in there as well. So yeah, it was a tough day as a Chiefs hater, but uh, the Eagles were fun to watch. I would love nothing more than the Eagles to win just for Saquon Barkley. Just such seems like such a good dude. And then it also got me thinking of just like how one worst move in Giants history, which is funny to watch just because I have friends that are Giants fans. But it also makes me think like you see all of these incredibly talented athletes go to these terrible organizations, whether that's Carolina or the Giants or the Jets or the Raiders right now, like any of these just bad organizations, you see these generational like athletes. Like Saquon coming out was I think he was drafted like fourth overall. Like he was the talk of college football. And he goes to this terrible organization and he's still a producing member on that team and no one hears about him or sees him. And then you go to a solid organization. Obviously it's one of the best teams in the league, but you get to see this amazing athleticism, and you just think how often these players are wasted by inept organizations, which is just kind of a bummer to think about. Like, what if Jamarcus Russell went to Green Bay or something like that, and then you have this new guy that might have been your next greatest of all time, and It's just kind of a bummer to watch, but I'm rooting for the Eagles just solely for Saquon Barkley to get out of this terrible organization as a really stand up teammate and guy from what it seems like, hard worker, amazing athlete and player, and he goes and wins the Super Bowl the first second he's out of that bad organization. So I will be cheering for the Eagles with my heart, even though my head is picking the Chiefs to win next, or I think week after next. So, yeah, that's our wrap up before the Super Bowl, and yeah, it's always a bummer when NFL's ticking down. Then we'll have to shift over to NBA or MLB or hockey or something like that. But it's always a bummer. But Super Bowl's coming up, and we'll definitely be talking about that then. So. My name is Jack Paisley with the Sports Casual. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again soon.